Recording is in progress. Good evening, y'all. It is August 8th, Tuesday, 5:39 p.m. This is Echo Platoon, evenings and weekends, Module 4, Week 11, Day 2. We're in full stack, and this is full stack architecture. We're going to be looking at the dance, client, web server, app server, database. Notice these arrows. It's basically it's the dance. We're gonna see how a user interacts with the DOM, how the DOM interacts with the front end, or is the front end, those kind of the same things, how that communicates back to the API, and how the API connects to the database, and then step forward. This is going to basically be a bunch of review, but it's all connected. It's all connected. We've done front end stuff. We've done some HTML, some CSS. I think we've done, plug in JavaScript in, interacting with the DOM from there. We've set up a very simple Python server, and we've interacted with databases. So you should already know how to do all this. This shouldn't be anything new, but I'm going to humor you and walk through it. So this is what we got. Client, web browser, curl, postman, etc. We're looking at the client right now. What you see here, this is the client. This is what the user gets to interact with. This is all they get to see. If they want to see any of this other stuff, too bad. They need our code, or they need an inspect tool, or they need to like crack their way into the back end, or request to use it. Web server. This is typically the first thing that the user is interacting with. You go to facebook.com, you hit the web server. You go to amazon.com, you hit the web server. The client request comes in, the server decides how to handle it. If it's just a static web page, all the server has to do is turn around, say, oh, static web page, I already got all that. You don't need to make any calls. Here you go, HTML document. There you go. But we're well past those days. Y'all wouldn't believe how many times static websites have been cool and then not cool and then cool again and then not cool. There's so many different, they're super fast, and there's a lot of tools out there to build a static website reactively. The less calls you make to the back end of the database, the faster it is. So as much as you can load up on the front end on the client side, faster things are going to be. We got an app server, an API. This is where any business logic happens. This is the app, basically. The web server, that's for the users. This is what's doing all the smarts. You don't want to put too much work on the web server. The app server is going to be handling most of it. The request is processed and analyzed. If the app server needs to interact with the database, it will do so. Any response from the database can be used to formulate a response, usually JSON, which is then forwarded back to the web server to pass on to the client. And then the database. We should have a decent idea of what a database is. It's keeping track of the data. Web servers and app servers meant to be kind of stateless, meaning they don't really remember anything. You create a variable, you use it, function closes, it should be dead. The only things that are surviving are global variables, which we like to abstract out even beyond that. Configuration settings. Yeah, config settings. That's about the only, variables that I want to see going in anywhere and then being kept and saved or anything like that. Pretty much everything else should be going to the database, because if your app server turns off, you don't have any of that anymore. Everything restarts on a restart. Database is where you keep your permanent data. Spinning up a shell and running it is not going to keep any data unless it's writing it somewhere. The database is where we'll be writing it to. Do we have any questions about these four pieces before I move on? Eventually, you will be making full stack applications that are deployed on the web for anyone to see. But as we build up to that end goal, we're going to be keeping our development local, basically setting it all up here right in front of you, and playing with it there. We won't be doing deploys just yet. I've kind of over-explained this, but we'll look at it one more time. This is the client. If you send a request to the web server is either going to return you some HTML, CSS, or via the web server, the client. I think this arrow should stop here and then go here. Oh, it does. Well, no, it doesn't. It writes right through that. I feel like, yeah, it's arguable. However you want to look at this, however you want to think about this. Client is sending out a request. It's going to go straight to the back of the API. The web server is going to be helping it shoot it that way. API is going to have to hit the database most likely, unless it's just doing some basic logic or something. Fire it back to the API, send it back to the client. Good to go. The example web app we'll be looking at today is called PeopleGetter. And from a client's perspective, all it does is either show a list of users or a single user, depending on a button that is clicked. This is the high level architecture here. Yep. So client's gonna be the browser, right? Web server is gonna be our live server VS Code extension. App server will be our Python API container, and then database will be in a Postgres container. So we're gonna spin up those containers. And sorry, I was fiddling around. So if you were to go to PeopleGetter, which is in the E&W Platoon repository, pulling it on down, and it's got some stuff here. Namely, you got a start script to start it up. Let's take a look at that. Setup, Docker inspect, yada 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 yada. We're started up. So let's see if this works. That Intel chip roaring. Maybe should have started this ahead of time, but now you'll just sit. I guess I can stop recording. And we're back. This is development server, blah, 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 blah. We are running a Flask application. I probably should have mentioned this. Has no one heard of the term, the application, the software Flask? I feel like I've talked about it, right? Have y'all stood up Flask? That's cool. Before we get too much more into this, let's figure out what this full stack application is here. We got a front end, a database, and an API. That's kind of the three parts. We're not providing the web client. It's something they got to go download themselves. Let's look at the front end. Starting with get ignore. Great. Oh wait, sorry, it's in here. What we've got here is an index.html, a style sheet, and app.js. Index is going to be providing all the HTML. App.js doing all the logic, connecting in there, working with the DOM, connecting to the DOM, interacting with the DOM with these methods, and CSS making it pretty. Actually, can I probably should start this up so we can all actually see what's going on and prove that it is working. I'm going to open up index.html. Cool. Is that the way I'm supposed to start that up? I don't use the live server very much. This looks like it has some CSS in it though, for sure. All right, so this is the application. Like it said, we're going to hit get everyone, and then ideally, oh, database people does not exist. Why is that? Ooh. What's going on here? Let me pause real quick. Back. All right, we're back. Had to blow away my old container. We got a new container. Looks good. You hit get everyone, we get a list of these users here. If we select number, let's do 40, we get a user. That's what it said we were going to do, right? So what we're looking at here, this front end bit, this HTML, CSS, all this fancy moving and activating things, that is being done by this HTML here. Very simple, not a lot going on here. People getter title, see that? That's this right here. This is it. This is the no joke. This is the HTML. That's all there is to it. The app.js is all the JavaScript that's doing all the logic. This is the front end interacting with the back end. Notice this base URL here. This is reaching out to our back end that is running on 48,000. Notice running 48,000. That's our back end right there. That's the container that is spun up. We've got some variables here, buttons, user select, container, and then we've got logic down here that kind of runs and creates the DOM for us. Let's talk about one feature at a time and kind of see how that goes. So I hit this get everyone button and I get a list of all users. Okay. How the heck does that happen? So off the bat, get everyone. Here is that button here. This one that you say, you see says get everyone. When we click that, who knows what it's doing? We got to check app.js. Do notice this button ID here has it's called list button, get everyone. Let's go see it, see if we can find it. List button. Cool. We have attached this JavaScript to that action. With click, we are going to remove users and then get people. This is still all front end, right? So let's figure out what remove users is. Where else is that? There it is. We've got this function here. While user container first child, basically what this means is while this DOM container has a first child, what this would do is return the first child, but it's truthy. So while there is a first child in this list here, remove the child. So it's going to just run through that list, blow them all away. This is an easy multi-use function because whether or not there is a giant list of people or a single list of people, we're going to use it for both. So does that make sense, y'all? It shouldn't, because we haven't talked exactly about what a user container is. So let's figure out what a user container is. Up here, user container, dot query selector, user container. Back from the index HTML, we have this div here called user container. That's all that is. It's just a div. It's an empty div. We build that out with these people when we run that get everyone function. So here we did the remove users. Let's see what this get person or get people is. Sorry, we're doing get people. List button, get people. Get people. This is the function that is reaching to the back end and getting a list of people. So URL is going to be this base URL, which is our backend, /all. It is making a call to our backend at the URL defined, basically our backend /all. It's going to wait to get that. It's going to set that into a variable called people. And then for each, it's going to create this HTML person. I want to pause right here. Pause. That's not actually going to do anything. But I want to go see what this is talking about. So we're going to go to our backend now, our API. Pretty much everything is right here in server.py. Flask is like Django, just smaller, doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles. You kind of pick and choose what you want to plug into it. Very, very simple. You can run your entire server off a single file. Not recommended. Probably better to, break it up. But let's look at what we're doing here. So remember, this call is being made to the back end at URL/all. The server has different routes that it's receiving here. This is the base route. If you were to just go to our server with no /all in it, it ought to return message success. That would be cool. But what we're hitting is this /all here. Remember, base URL/all. We're actually hitting this app route. The front end talking to the back end. That's what it's doing. It fires off some of this Python code, which we're not going to get, dig deep into how it's calling it. Think of it more like we're just going to kind of talk about it at a higher level. Yada, yada, yada. Yep, great. Connect to the database. Don't care. Database people. Cool. This is what it's actually running on the database, though. So we are making a query to the database, select star from person. This should get all of them. And that's going to be, returned as basically a fetch. It's going to close that connection, return that. That'll be the end of it. Oh, wait, hold up. People right here is going to be returned to the user in JSON form. Basically, we're returning a key called people, and we're returning a value, people. If there's no people, if it didn't make any connection, if the database is empty for some reason, it's going to return a string saying no one's home. But we are definitely getting these people. So let's see the database is talking to. This shouldn't be anything crazy. We're not going to look at the database visually. We're just going to kind of look at the init SQL, because I think you guys can read this well enough to kind of understand what it's doing. This is the database we created. It's called people. We've got a single table called person. Name, email, favorite animal, great. And then we are seeding it with all this data. So first person is Sadie, S. Masterson, yada, yada, armadillo, 7-banded. Cool, that's their favorite animal. And then all of these are kind of being inserted. So we've got, X number of people here, and almost 100. So that's what the database actually looks like. So that exists. That has been created. That database is real. Those are inserted into there. The back end, when it's hit at this route, is getting a list of all of those people. It's taking all of those instances out of the database, slamming them into JSON. Basically, it's pulling that data object, turning it into JSON, key value pair. In the tables, your properties and the value is going to be your key value pair. Your rows and the value is going to be your key value pair. And we're going to return that to the front end. We can probably we can probably see that. Maybe. Let me restart this. I don't know if we have to.
So the column headers will be the keys, and then the rows will be the values.
I like everything you said except for headers. This is going to be. I'm sorry.
The columns, like the titles, will be the
Yes.
key.
Yes. So let's see what that actually looks like. Hopefully I can just turn this on and off real easy. Get everyone. Oh, it's not up yet. Get everyone. Oh, I can't dig into there and see it the way I want to. I can't play with the container the way I want to. And I'm not going to do that in front of y'all. Basically. Oh, wait. That would be returning this JSON on this back end, right? So pulling out of the table, pulling out of the database, pulling out of the person table, the people table, all that is being converted into JSON, and it's being returned here. Actually, we could see that. Check it out. This is what it's actually pulling. So this is the JSON that the backend is returning. When we're looking at it here, when it's returning this JSON.dumps, that's basically, hey, create JSON out of this right here. What this is a key, or it's a dictionary. The key being people, the value being a ternary, basically. If people exist or if people don't exist, it should be this string. But we're getting these people. What is people? All this. That's the JSON being returned by the backend. Okay? You all follow? Did I lose anyone there? So this is hitting our database. It's doing a select all. We're taking the output of that select all, spitting it into JSON, firing JSON off to the front. Okay. Remember, here's our Sadie S. Masterson. She likes the armadillo, 7-banded, smart choice. It's a good animal, make good pets. They don't all have leprosy, I promise. Let's take it on back to app.js, where we stopped. So people is going to be the result of that fetch. That fetch that went to the back end and then went to the database has been rolled forward to the back end, served to the front end, and now we have it here in this variable. What we're going to do next is for each of those people, we're going to create a p tag, create HTML person. And, is that built in? Yeah. Up. No, it's up here. So from each of those, we've got this function here. So this is the front end building it all out. It's got all the information, and it could just spit it out to the user, but the user doesn't want to see a bunch of JSON. The user wants to see pretty output like this. So how does each one of those people get turned into this? Let's take a look at one of them. Let's look at old Sadie again. This is this user Sadie. She is the 0 index. She's going to be the very first one created. It'll be her ID will be 1, won't be 0. IDs start at 1. Here she is. So the way that's being generated is by the JavaScript. It's doing some real basic, easy to follow stuff here. It's creating a variable called div, a variable called h3, p1, p2, and it is going to be creating these elements for the DOM, a div, an h3, a p, and a second p. Then it's adding this text. So this variable is created. This is some JavaScript stuff, right? This is Node, actually. This is Node. When I say JavaScript, I'm talking Node. This is a Node server. We created this h3 tag, called it h3. The inner text of it is going to be name person index 1. So the very first person, the index of that one person. Let's see what that really is. Look, the first child, and I could probably make that a little bit bigger. The first child right here is what it's pulling down. Index 0 is the primary key. Index 1 is the name. Is I keep losing my spot there. So this h3 inner text is going to be this string here, name, colon, person, index 1, which is their name. Looky here. That's that h3 tag we were just looking at. It builds an h3, HTML element, puts the inner text of it to be name, colon, whatever this is. And that's how it's doing that. The other two, these p tags, are doing the same thing. They're taking something out of this JSON, plugging it in, making a nice HTML element. All of this wrapped in a div, right? This is the main div being called item. That's the class. User container is appending this child. What is that user container? It's just this over here. It's this big div. We're just packing divs full of packets of information within this div. Right now, that's the only one that gets put in there. and this is being displayed to the user. I said we were going to get everyone. So every time, let's see, what's the get all, get people? Get people is for each, create HTML person. So for every single one of those, it's creating HTML person, putting them in that person container, the people container, and it's being restored or shown to the user. We can see that if we really want to. Here it is. Here it is. User container right there. That should have all our junk in there. Let's find Sadie. There she is. So within the div of user container, where this is all being iterated, pushed in there, these are the individual, bits and pieces here that are coming out of our database. There are a few other things kind of going on, but I feel like we can kind of talk step by step if we'd like to. But have I lost anyone yet? And it's totally okay to say yes. And it's totally okay to say, no, you over-explained that, Jordan. Just don't want to get lost.
The only part I think I missed was when where were we, like, when JavaScript was fetching it? Where was it fetching it from?
Yep. So this button here, this get everyone button in the index.html, it is this button here. It's a button. It's got some text in it that says get everyone. Its ID is right here, list button. The JavaScript knows what it is because it's got it's got this listener here. It is listening to this ID list button, and it's waiting for a click. On a click, it's going to remove the users. We don't need to dig through that. We kind of understand how that works, but it does get people. Here we go with the fetch. So it fetches by going to the API's URL /all. And this is basically just awaiting it, and then it's setting it in its own new variable. But that is hitting server.py. And we're hitting this route here because this /all, imagine this says like localhost, right? That's kind of what we're doing here. But we don't need to specify that because the server doesn't know what it's being served on. All it knows is, hey, if you talk to me and you go and put /all at the end of my URL, you're going to get all this. And I mean, we probably even maybe prove that. Containers always throw me off a little bit as far as like what I am allowed to do and not allowed to do, but this should be kosher. 8,000. Let's just go here. If I visit this place, check it out. This is our actual running server. We've got basically, think about it this way, two servers running. We've got the front end and we've got the back end. And the database is kind of a server, but we get the front end and the back end. Why did we get this output when I went here? Does anyone know? I'm looking at server.py right now.
The app route for the root directory is message success.
That's right. So if I were to hit a single, oh, you know what? We didn't really talk about getting how an individual user happens, but let's just talk about all again. So if I'm going to localhost, I could also do this. And look, there they all are. This is not going to be pretty. I don't have a, I would if I was on my, actually, I think I can do it this way. Do I have a pretty JSON reader here? Yeah, I do. Okay. Got a Chrome extension here that turns JSON into pretty JSON. Here is what happens if we hit all, right? This is the JSON that's being restored. This is hitting the database and being served to the front end. we can circumnavigate. We can go circumnavigate is not the word. We can circumvent the front end by just hitting the back end, because this back end is just a server. All it's doing is running on port 8000 on our local host and serving whatever comes at it. So when I hit all, it's going to hit the database and give me all this junk. The route we haven't talked about is how we get a single one. If we just were to go to an ID. Let's go see how Sadie's doing. Oh, no, I want to do this on. So by going to the same URL and just putting in an ID, it's going to serve me that one single person. So the fetch knows to look up a single ID. You know, the client, that's what this is doing. Going to one is just firing off a request to the back end to slash whatever this is and getting that one user. And you can see exactly what you'd expect the back end to serve you, because it does it right here. The more you get used to kind of just poking at the back end like this, the less useful things like Postman initially seem. Postman is very useful, but initially you can test your request by just hitting the back end in a URL if you want to, or in a client. Did I answer the question? Because you were talking about fetches, but I don't want to go too deep yet.
Yeah, I was looking for like the Python part of it where we use the cyborg or whatever it's called. And then
Psycop G,
yes.
G, yeah. You can use that. I wouldn't worry too much about it. I don't want to teach you any of this, because a lot of this is basically we're hitting. Where is that even defined? Oh, look, we've got these things that should never be here, by the way. This should not be hard coded here. This shouldn't be written here. Well, actually, it is pulling out there. That's almost safe, but basically, here's the host of the database. Here's the port of the database. Here's the database name. Here's the user we're signing in as. Here's a password we've plugged in, cheated, stuff like that. With this connection, execute this Postgres, this PSQL. It's just running that on the database once all this connection is done. This is not exactly what it's going to look like in Django, so I don't want you to get too caught up around the syntax. I'll tell you, even if you were going to use Psycop G, Psycho PG, I don't even know. It's Python something. Anyways, you wouldn't be doing this. This is the complete opposite of what you should be doing with an ORM, which is feeding it raw SQL. But you guys know SQL, so you can understand what's going on here. I don't have to teach you anything new. The back end is running a SQL query for you based off of what you give it. The all doesn't take anything, doesn't need it from you. The ID one, however, this is setting a variable here. So anything that comes into this backend with a slash something, this backend is going to say, oh, that must be an ID, and tries to plug it in. This is not super safe, I'm noticing now, because, which is fine. This is an example, right? But it knows whatever I plug it in, it's gonna go get that user, right? But what if I don't give it a number? What if I give the word poop? Oh no, we broke it. We broke everything. This is why you have try catch. This is why you have logic written in there. We killed the server. It doesn't know how to do that. It went to the database and said, it said select star from person where ID is equal to poop. And the database is like, and the back end says, whoop, and now the front end is upset because it didn't get anything it knows what to do with, right? Does that make sense, y'all? We would probably do something like ID, like if, it'd be like if ID equal no, I forget off the top of my head the Python to check to validate it's actually a number, but that's something we would want to do to make sure this is not going to break the database. We'd probably even do something like, hey, only give it IDs that actually exist within the database, or we would do something like try it. If it doesn't work, spit back that doesn't work. That way we don't kill our database, which we may have broken. No, it's still running. It's a little bit more robust than that, but that can lock up a server. If a server doesn't have any logic, if it doesn't have any error handling, it can't handle the error and it just stops working. You break your shell. That's why we do try catch statements. That's why we do, stuff like that. Does that make sense? I don't think I'm going to get a volunteer, so I'm going to grab one. Ken, you feeling confident?
Yeah, why not?
Cool. You're in charge of this code. I need you to make a change, right? I don't want this. You see this here? How it uses a 6. That's a pain, right? I don't know what 6 is. I want to know what their name is, right? I want their first name. How can I fix that?
I got the code pulled up now, so
that might be a hard change. I'm just off the top of my head thinking about it, but
it's probably somewhere in the JavaScript.
Okay, maybe. I'm going to the JavaScript, and I'm going to
either the HTML or the JavaScript. But
so yeah, HTML, it's drop down container here. The list. Oh wait, where is it? Drop down select ID is user select. I don't want to. We're not going to actually try and change this because I think it's going to be bigger to bite off than I want. But you're right. So we start with the index.html. It's this drop down, right? Where do I go?
So then in the JavaScript, it looks like there's a for loop that basically makes numbers.
Oh yeah, it is being manually created, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, but
so this option document dot create element.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. That's a rough example. Let's do something that's a little bit easier. I mean, a lot of this just gets changed on the front end. I want to think of a back end change.
I mean, maybe the back end would be some kind of changing the endpoint or what the endpoint gets.
Yeah. What if I wanted to do? What if I wanted this to work? How would I do that?
You probably go in your Python deal, your server. And then you'd have to create a new app.route probably, I would imagine. I don't know what kind of squid you're trying to get from the database, but you probably change whatever you need to below that. But yeah, where ID is, you'd replace with squid or whatever endpoint that you just made.
Let's do it like this. So we'll create a new endpoint where you get by name, and then that should probably work. It's not a thing, right? Single user name. Okay, so I've created a new route. The reason I didn't just I need another route because basically this is a dumb route. Anything that gets plugged in after the slash is just gonna go hit this route. I want to route.
What about?
Yep.
What about line 52 where it says cursor still says ID there? Should that be changed too?
Yeah, we're still gonna fix that. So I'm showing that we're going to, if someone goes to get by name, we're gonna look at whatever is there. We're gonna use that in this function, and then in the SQL, where, what is it? Is it name? Is it first name? Do we know? How do I figure out how to query by this name here?
You could probably go into your init file for your database.
There we go. That'll work, right? So we did that person. This should all still work. Did we break it? There's no Python errors. What did I say my endpoint was going to be? Get by name. Oh, we haven't written a front end for this, but that's okay. So we're going to do get underscore by underscore name. And then say, oh, that person doesn't exist. Did I say the name right? Is it capitalized? How picky is it, I wonder?
Yeah, capitalize the S.
Yeah, I'll probably capitalize it. Oh, I didn't even spell it anywhere near right. Assuming there's only one Sadie. There it is. That was easy. We just built an endpoint in Flask, and you guys told me how to do it. That's why I love Flask, y'all. It's great. You can build stuff real quick. Django's great. Flask is fast. Very quick, easy. I just plug that in. Any questions about how I just created this endpoint in the back end that works with the database?
No, but could you just go back to the code real quick?
Yes. Which code? Where you want to look?
The server.
Yep.
Use that.
So I would like you to ignore pretty much all of this, but you can look at everything else. We added an endpoint get by name. So anything that, hits up get by name, it's going to assume is a name. Again, this ain't real smart. If I put in something that's not a real name, it's not going to be able to find it.
So is that Flask syntax when you have the arrows on both sides of the name? That's showing that like you can plug something in right there. Basically.
Yeah, that's how you set a parameter variable. These are called parameters. You can break these down by URL/parameter or URL parameter 0. This is parameter 0. This is parameter 1. If you wanted to break it down that way, some people like to create their backends where it's just like a 1, 1, or like a bunch of numerals, so you know which table, which value, which whatever. Like I like to have these. I would rather do this. We'll get more into that later. But basically, yeah. This is saying, hey, if someone goes to get by name / whatever comes next, that's the variable it's going to be. You got to plug it into the function here. It'd be real nice if Flask was smart and didn't make you type it twice, but you got to do it. And yeah.
Is this a pretty common method? How to use SQL with Python?
No, you're not going to write raw.
The standard.
That's a question that I think I have to do a lot of explaining to kind of answer. Short answer, no, you're not going to see raw SQL written into your backend. You are going to see something more like, you're going to see something more Pythonic. It would be something like, I forget Pee-wee off the top of my head. It's basically like,
I think Umar was kind of showing us some of that.
Yeah, I don't want to type out something. It'd be like get by name, and then you would put in like name. So, stuff like that. It's more Pythonic. You wouldn't have to write out raw SQL. It would be something that like this or something like that. Which I don't want to write too much because we can't really show off the way Django does it because Django uses something that's only for Django. Flask uses whatever you want to use. Often Flask or SQL Alchemy, often Pee-wee, often just raw. You're not going to see very much raw this. You're going to see other libraries that are a little bit easier to use.
So is Flask like pretty commonly used, or is it just like nice for some fun little projects here and there?
No, I'm pretty sure Instagram is written in Flask. Like there are big like websites and stuff that are written in Flask.
Have you dealt with this fast API? I think it's called, like the other Python type of framework. I've seen.
I've not, but that works too. They kind of accomplish a lot of the same things. Pinterest, sorry, not Instagram. Pinterest is written in Flask. So is Zillow. So is Patreon. So is Uber, Netflix, all running in Flask, y'all. So when you get into this, I need to stop recording if I'm going to rant, but we'll go with it anyways. When y'all are newer, like in this field, it's real easy to build opinions about tools, and that is something you should not do. Don't ever, I don't want you to, and you're gonna hear me saying it. I got a bad habit of saying it, like this is good, this is bad. There are a few bad tools. Most tools are built for a purpose. There is a reason these tools exist, and they're scratching an itch that other tools don't. Django is not better than Flask. It's not better. It's not more robust. It's not like a better tool used out there. It's just a different tool. Flask is not better than Django. Being faster and easier to set up is not better. Oftentimes you go through, building out your Flask app, and by the end of it, you've put in so much work into getting it to do things that Django does out of the box. You probably should have started with Django. It all depends on what you're trying to do, what itch you're trying to scratch, and a lot of times just what people are comfortable with. So no, Flask is something you can build big websites with. So is Swift, or not Swift, Fast API, sorry. There's a lot of them out there. Django is what we will be teaching because Django is real helpful, really widely used, very safe. It does a lot of things that you're not even going to fully appreciate, and that's okay. Flask is good for showing off stuff real quick, and it's also good for building out full-blown, massive applications. It's all about where you start, what you want to work with, things like that. I'm sure the Pinterest developers have a good reason or not for why they built it in Flask, but it will work. And no one's going to say, "Oh, you develop in Flask? We're a Django shop." It's like, no, I know how to do it this way. I'm sure I can pick up how to do it that way. A lot of these things work very similarly under the hood. I learned Sinatra in like 2 days, and that's written in Ruby, and that is basically Flask in Ruby. A lot of differences, doesn't work exactly the same, but I knew Django and I kind of knew Flask, so I could pick up Sinatra real quick. Once you learn this dance here, and kind of how that's handled, how routes are written, and how routes kind of interact with databases, and how they might use helper files to do things, it's all mostly pretty similar. Flask is cool. I like it. You're going to learn Django in this class, and that's all right. I will gripe about Django, but that's because I like Flask better, not because it is better. Any other questions about this dance we done did, this full stack application we have running in front of us, how we built out this endpoint, and how we might build out other endpoints and add other features?